So today I'm going to start a series on the Phillipsburg, Kansas negatives that were taken by George Alfred Locke. And I tried to do this previously, and I tried to do it all encompassing, and it just became too long. And I found some additional information on the family, and so I thought, oh, I'm just going to start this over again, and I'm going to do it in bite-sized segments. So this one is going to be about how did I come across this collection of, it's really 5,900 negatives. How did I come across them? So it all started a few years back. I buy a lot of negatives off of eBay, and I started buying these negatives from this couple out of Wichita, Kansas, and they were photographs taken by George A. Locke. So I didn't even know about them. I just liked the pictures. So I started buying, and I ended up buying some in bulk. You know, I was buying them individually, and we just got to chatting, and I ended up buying some in bulk. And they started seeing what I was doing with them and how I was posting them, and they really appreciated that. So they put me into contact with this woman by the name of Ruby, who manages the Fort Bissell Museum in Phillipsburg, Kansas. And so we started corresponding back and forth over a period of time, and she talked with the board, and it was decided that in exchange for the negatives, I would provide them with scanned images, so files from the scans of all the negatives. And I, in fact, included the ones that I had bought previously from Ron and his wife. And so that's how I came across them. So I was told that it looked like there were about 2,000 negatives. And I get there, and it was a record-breaking heat. The 2 days that we were there, it was record-breaking heat. And before I took off, Ron mentioned, hey, you might want to bring a fan. Well, fortunately, Ruby already had a fan there, a big industrial fan. And actually, because of the construction of the building, yes, it was hot. It was hot, but it was tolerable. And so we get there, and I'm going to insert some pictures along the way here, but it started to become apparent to us that there were more negatives here than the 2,000 that were estimated. And when I drove out there, I drove out in my SUV, and I brought along some containers. They're a little bit bigger than a shoebox size container, plastic container. And I had calculated how many I thought I was going to need based on what that was told to me. Well, it turns out there were a lot more, and luckily we were able to go to the local hardware store and pick up some more containers so that we could box them all up to take them back. It was a lot of work, because glass negatives are very heavy, and even that's why you can't keep them in too big a container, because the weight would be too much. You couldn't even lift them up. So we get out there and started to realize that why it was so deceiving is because they were packed too deep. So we were only seeing the front of it, but behind the first box there was another box. So there was a total of 5,400 negatives in this collection. So we pack it all up, and honestly, it was so nerve-wracking, because your vehicle can only have so much weight in it. And we were, there were some calculations made, and we were kind of on the edge there, and got a little nervous around Chattanooga, particularly because, you know, you're going down the hill off the mountain, and I don't know, very, very nervous. But we made it okay. It was 4 days to get there, 2 days we were there, and 4 days to get back. And I'm in Savannah, Georgia, so that was quite an adventure. And I kind of did a little video on that previously. Maybe I'll try to attach it to this. We'll see if I can find it again. So I got them home and I started scanning them. And what I started to realize was that the negatives were in this one-room schoolroom at this Fort Bissell, and they were in a closet of this one-room schoolroom. And they had been there for like 35 years. But prior to that, this woman by the name of Margaret, who is still, she's 104 years old. When the photography studio closed down, she rescued these negatives out of the old studio. And not only did she rescue them, but she cleaned them up as best she could and sorted them and even slip sheeted to protect them, so that when I got them here and I started scanning, I just started noticing she's already sorted these. And when I say sorted, I mean there were male photographs, there were female photographs, there were couple photographs, there were family photographs, and there were children photographs. So she had them sorted in categories. And that's very helpful. It was very helpful to me. So prior to them coming to Fort Bissell, they were originally in this studio, this photography studio. She rescues them from being trashed, cleans them up, sorts them out, and puts them in this, they're put in this museum. So one of the reasons they were agreeable to me doing what I did was because they're just sitting there, and just sitting there doesn't add any value to anyone. And it's kind of, they're in Kansas. One tornado could destroy the whole building, and all that is gone. So now I just sent them a hard drive with all the images on it, to include the ones that I purchased. So I want them to have everything, so that people in the community can go there and see if there are any family members in these photographs. So that's kind of the story of how I came across these negatives. And it's kind of a, I don't want to say it's a common theme, but I've had this happen in other occasions where I acquire quite a bit, and sometimes I pay for them, sometimes they're donated. So in this case, they were donated, and I'm really appreciative of that. So again, Phillipsburg is, I had never been to, there were several states I stopped in I had never been in, and I certainly had never been in Kansas, and it's a really small town farming community, still is a farming community. The store situation is not super great, so to find those containers was really fortuitous for us, because there were not a lot of options, and I didn't want a bunch of glass negatives sliding around in the back of my vehicle. So that all worked out. So the next segment will be on George Locke, and actually a gentleman by the name of Cyprian Cobb, because they had a photography studio together, and Cyprian was George Locke's mentor. And so the next segment will be on them, and then we'll continue with another area of the family. I've been on, like I said, I've been on Ancestry and Newspaper.com. I've been researching this for quite a while, and found a lot more in the last 2 days than I had previously known. So that's why I didn't want to do a long segment. So stay tuned for the second in this series of stories about Phillipsburg, Kansas, and George Locke.